Hello everybody, this is Kris Bruin. I am coming to you from Trinity Lutheran Church in Weatherford, Texas, and this is number 8 of the unit, Sir, We Would Like to See Jesus. This is Jesus Gives Us Joy. You can pick us up if you're watching this. Of course, you've already picked us up, but you may want to know what your alternatives are. We are uploaded Sundays at 7 or 8 in the morning, and we can be seen on Facebook and on YouTube. As you know, if you've been with us for a while, we always start with a couple of icebreaker questions. So I'm going to reach into my bag here and pull out a couple of questions. Looks like I'm getting down to the end here. 1, 2 questions. And then we'll see. We'll see what it's making me do. What questions I have to answer. Oh, well. And you may wish to pause after I read the questions. Okay? Name something you do over and over again that feels right every time you do it. And that's number 1. And number 2 is you have $1 million, yay, but you have to give it all away. Who or what are you going to give it to? Okay? Name something you do over and over again, but that feels right every time you do it. Well, there are many things I do over and over again that actually do feel right every time. But I'm going to think especially that every time I click on my Facebook link and I get some posts from my friends, that feels right to me. I'm especially thinking of a friend we live far apart now, but we used to live quite close to each other. We used to be able to see each other in real life all the time. She's a mom with a lot of kids. Her name's Julia. When I get a post from Julia, I know I'm going to have fun with it. She posts a lot about her kids, and I just love watching those kids grow up. So that's something I do over and over again. Feels right every time. Then I've got this $1 million to give away. Well, you know perfectly well I'd give some of it at least. Let's say I give half of it to Trinity because it's my church home and that's really important to me. So I'm left with $500,000, and boy, would the requests come flooding in. Certainly I would help my family with some of it. There are some needs that could be addressed there. And then I think, so I give some to them. And then there are just some causes that are really dear to my heart. I really care a lot. I love to read and I care about literacy. So I'd probably find some literacy related causes to give the rest to. There might be a few other things that would creep in there, but those are the 3 biggies: Trinity, family, and literacy. That would do it for me. So I wish we were together and I could hear your answers, because I'm sure they would be interesting and fun. Our reading for the day is from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 16, verses 16 to 40. And it's kind of a long reading, so I'll interrupt it here and there to talk about what's going on in the reading. That way we won't have to go back and reprise so much. But also, even though it's long, it is like never a dull moment. There are so many things happening in this reading. So this is a reading from the Acts of the Apostles, and get my rocking action here. Once while we were going to the place for prayer, a servant girl met us. She had an evil spirit in her. She earned a lot of money for her owners by telling fortunes. This girl followed Paul and us. She said loudly, "These men are servants of the Most High God. They are telling you how you can be saved." She kept this up for many days. This bothered Paul. So he turned and said to the Spirit, "By the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out of her." Immediately, the spirit came out. Now notice what's going on here. First of all, a lot of times in the stories about Jesus, it's the demons who recognize him first because they recognize his power and they recognize the difference that he makes. And so the same thing is happening now to Paul and Silas. She's following them and screaming at them over and over again. And once the spirit comes out of her, the evil spirit, wow, she's calm. She can just be her own self again. Can you imagine the feeling of being taken over by something else that you didn't want or didn't like, that made you kind of weird? It's kind of creepy. So we got a creepy beginning here, but Paul is able to take care of it. By the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out. And the spirit leaves her. The next part is, however, not so happy. The owners of the servant girl saw this. Remember, she was a slave. These people knew that now they could not use her to make money. So they grabbed Paul and Silas and dragged them before the city rulers in the marketplace. Here they brought Paul and Silas to the Roman rulers and said, "These men are Jews and are making trouble in our city. They are teaching things that are not right for us as Romans to do." So her owners are quite upset because they used to charge people to have her tell their fortunes, tell what was going to happen to them, because the demons were able to do this, and now she can't do it anymore. She's just a normal person. So they've accused Paul and Silas of being Jews, which they were actually, but they were Jewish Christians, and so they're accused of being agitators. The Emperor Claudius had expelled all the Jews from Rome not that long before, so there was quite a bit of prejudice in the Roman world against the Jews at that time, and also, by extension, against the Christians. So the magistrates, the leaders in Philippi say, out. They are gone. The crowd joined the attack against them. Gosh, I think they had a riot. The Roman officers tore the clothes of Paul and Silas and had them beaten with rods again and again. After being severely beaten, Paul and Silas were thrown into jail. The jailer was ordered to guard them carefully. When he heard this order, he put them far inside the jail. He pinned down their feet between large blocks of wood. So being whipped with rods, what was that all about? Well, a rod was a little kind of thin, like whip kind of thing, but they bound them together, say maybe in groups of 6 to 8. So you'd have 6 or 8 of these rods to about the thickness of a baseball bat, if you can imagine. They'd figured out that it hurt a lot more than just being hit with a piece of wood. So they're whipping them with rods, with these bound together rods, because also they knew that they could create an immense amount of pain and suffering, but probably they wouldn't die. So they wanted them to live and feel as much pain as possible. They were not trying to kill them. Okay? So after they're beaten, they're thrown into jail, and their feet are put in what is called the stocks, which is probably, like manacles attached to the wall. Clunk, clunk. You can't move. You just have to sit there with your feet stuck out and all clamped down. It's very uncomfortable. So the jailer is determined that they're going to stay there. Then, about midnight, so they're now in jail, they're in the dungeon, they're shackled to the wall. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing songs to God. Really? I don't want to tell you what I'd be doing, but I don't think that would be it. I might be screaming and crying. The other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was a big earthquake. It was so strong that it shook the foundations of the jail. Then all the doors of the jail broke open. All the prisoners were freed from their chains. The jailer woke up and saw that the jail doors were open and thought that the prisoners had already escaped. So he got his sword and he was about to kill himself. But Paul shouted, "Don't hurt yourself. We're all here." Now, what was that about? Well, first of all, the praying and singing is because in spite of how much pain they were in, they were still feeling that really strong connection to Jesus. And so their hearts were not in pain. Their bodies were hurting like crazy. But in their hearts, they were feeling okay. So they kept on praying and they kept on singing. Then there was an earthquake. The doors flew open and the stocks broke off. And by the way, the Philippi has a lot of earthquakes, even to this day. It's a very earthquake-prone part of the world. So it makes perfect sense that this happened. One of the commentators that I read said, if you've ever seen inside of a Turkish prison, you would know immediately that of course the walls would fall down in an earthquake because they're just nasty, nasty old buildings and they would fall down easily. So they did. The doors flew open. Why did the jailer think he was going to kill himself? He thought he would be put to death for letting his prisoners escape. This is actually described in another part of the Bible where a jailer was put to death for letting prisoners escape. So he decides he's going to kill himself instead of waiting for certain punishment to come his way. But now Paul stops him, and Paul shouted, "Don't hurt yourself. We're all here." The jailer told someone to bring a light. Then he ran inside. Shaking with fear, he fell down before Paul and Silas and brought them outside and said, "Men, what must I do to be saved?" They said to him, "Believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved, you and all the people in your household." So Paul and Silas told the message of the Lord to the jailer and all the people in his house. At that hour of the night, the jailer took Paul and Silas and washed their wounds. Then he and all his people were baptized immediately. After this, the jailer took Paul and Silas and gave them food. He and his family were very happy because now they believed in God. So he took them home, washed their wounds. The household was baptized. That's like the men, the women, the children, the slaves. They all belonged together. And then they all had, I guess, a celebration, a meal. Wow. The next morning, then they went back to jail, I believe, because the next morning, the Roman officers sent the police to tell the jailers, "No, let these men go free," because they decided, well, whatever, take them away. The jailer said to Paul, "The officers have sent an order to let you go. You can leave now, go in peace." But Paul said to the police, "They beat us in public without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens, and it's supposed to be illegal to beat Roman citizens. And they threw us in jail. Now they want to make us go away quietly? No. If they want us to leave, they must come themselves and tell us to leave." So actually, Paul made that happen. He made them come and apologize to him. Yeah. It's an amazing story. And you know, we've had kind of a hard week in our country this week. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering for a lot of people. And I actually wondered a little bit, like, should I really be talking about joy? How we're going to have joy? Jesus is going to give us joy. Well, but then I read the story, and then I read it again. Then I read it again. You know, you have to read these things more than once to really get them, I find. And you know, I did the research that I normally do for this, and I thought, yeah, what better passage could we all be reflecting on at the end of this week than one that says they were arrested illegally, they were for something they didn't do, they were beaten, and they shouldn't have been beaten because they were Roman citizens, but they were beaten anyway. They were thrown in jail, and what did they do? They prayed and they sang. Whatever is happening in our world, whatever is happening in your world right now, we can still feel the peace and the joy that comes from Jesus. Now, I've given you a link to a really beautiful song. The song is How Can I Keep From Singing? Some of you probably have heard it before. But a 160-piece group of musicians and singers recorded it in New York City for this time, for the coronavirus time. It is an incredibly beautiful rendition of it. So I encourage you to click on it. You know, it's actually one of my favorites. Yeah. One of the stanzas goes, "My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn, that hails a new creation. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing?" Click on it on the link and you'll hear a bunch of people sing it way better than I can sing it. But I've been singing this song actually for several days since I came up with it to make it part of this. And your craft for the week is also in your handout. If you are connected to Trinity by email, you got it through email. And you just need to open it up. And the craft is a gratitude scavenger hunt. So if you're working with a group, you can divide into groups and see, and then everybody in the group has to agree on the things that they bring forward. Or it's fun to do just by yourself. And if you'll see it, it's number 8 is find a song to listen to or to sing. So if you like to sing, you can sing your own song. If you like to listen, you need to find one. But I gave you the link to How Can I Keep From Singing, done just incredibly beautifully. All right, our psalm for the day we have used before, but there's nothing that says we can't use it again, because I think it's really, really perfect for what we're all going through and struggling with right now. I wish you really this week a very special peace and the kind of joy that comes straight from Jesus, because, you know, sometimes that's the only kind we can have. But it is the best kind, the best kind. So we take it to our hearts and we let our hearts be at peace and see what we can do to move forward in our lives. This is Psalm 46. God is our protection and our strength. He always helps in times of trouble. So we will not be afraid if the earth shakes or if the mountains fall into the sea. We will not fear even if the oceans roar and foam or if the mountains shake at the raging sea. There is a river which brings joy to the city of God. This is the holy place where God Most High lives. God is in that city, so it will not be shaken. God will help her at dawn. Nations tremble and kingdoms shake. God shouts and the earth crumbles. The Lord of heaven's armies is with us. The God of Jacob is our protection. Come and see what the Lord has done. He has done amazing things on the earth. He stops wars everywhere on the earth. He breaks all bows and spears and burns up the chariots with fire. God says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be praised in all the nations. I will be praised throughout the earth. The Lord of heaven's armies is with us. The God of Jacob is our protection." Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm going to show you something I forgot at the beginning because I thought you might want to know. Here's Philippi. This is the Mediterranean. Palestine, Israel is way over here. So these are the journeys of Paul, and this is Philippi up here on the Aegean Sea, where this was all happening. But the Romans owned it all at that point. What can I say? They were really important. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week, if you are a regular, when we will finish up our 9th session, and that will be the end of this series. Probably we will have to think of something else for the fall.